Hello folks, I'm Trav and this is the Mason Jar Suite. Today we're processing cabbage. That's right, we're making sauerkraut. Classic, easy, delicious. We'll also make a couple of variations. One that's just green sauerkraut and another one with all kinds of pretty colors and things in it. And demonstrate how easy and flexible making sauerkraut really is. The word sauerkraut is German. In English, it means sour cabbage, which is what it tastes like, in a good way. But people have been fermenting cabbage and other things since long before Germany was a thing. It's an easy way to preserve stuff. It takes no cooking, no stovetop, no electricity or anything, and stuff can keep for a long, long time, even if you don't put it in the refrigerator. Now, many people are nervous about their first forays into the wide world of fermentation. It's okay. Will it be good? Will it be safe? What about mold? What if it becomes sentient and tries to take over my town, leaving everything I've ever loved in ruins? But after fermenting a few foods, most people gain the confidence that the things they make are really tasty, and that if you take a vegetable and submerge it in water with some salt, good stuff's gonna happen. We're going to make two kinds of sauerkraut today. Simple green one and the really pretty colorful one that's got carrots and peppers in it. You can also add garlic, you could add turnips, you could add beets, you could add whatever you want. Usually it's best to start by peeling all the outer leaves off of the cabbage and then giving that cabbage a good rinse. It just helps keep any contaminants down. A lot of people have touched that thing from field to processing facility to packing into boxes, kids and all the other people with their fingers all over things. Chop the cabbage in half, cut it in half again, and then take that core out. Slice the cabbages up. How thick? Doesn't matter. Experiment. You can make a batch out of little tiny thin shredded strips, or you can just cut big chunks and pack it into a thing and see how it tastes. I tend to like them a little less than 1/4 inch thick, which is about the width of my pinky. Now you can do it with a knife or use a cabbage board. These days we call them mandolins, but not the kind you play bluegrass on. Now, let's talk about weight. Sauerkraut is easy. You certainly can, haphazardly, without really measuring, take a bunch of cabbage and cut it up and take some amount of salt and put it on there and say, that looks like a good amount of salt. And then pack it into a thing and it'll be fine. The thing is, if you want to be consistent, then you should measure. I like to measure by weight. If I know the weight ratio of salt to cabbage, I can easily calculate it to 5 pounds of cabbage or 10 pounds of cabbage or 575 pounds of cabbage if I want. That's math. We're making 2 different batches of sauerkraut in 2 different styles with the same technique. They're both going to be 5-pound batches. So weigh out 5 pounds of the green cabbage, and in another container, we're going to weigh out 4 pounds of red and green cabbage all mixed together. And then to that 4 pounds, we're going to add 1 more pound of other stuff. In this case, we're just going to use carrots. We're going to use peppers. You could also add garlic. You could also add spices. You could also add more cabbage. So into my 5 pounds of cabbage, I'm putting a 1/3 cup of salt, or about 3 ounces of salt. Mix that cabbage and salt. Use your hand. You washed them, right? And mush the cabbage and salt together. Really work that salt in. Then take that whole container of cabbage and salt and leave it there on the counter, or stick it in the corner, or put it away or something for about 10 minutes. Now, this is flexible too. You could leave it for 10 minutes, or you could leave it overnight. Some people prefer that, just out at room temperature. And into the next batch, we put 4 pounds of cabbage, which is red, and we used green. We also thought, what else would we like to put into this cabbage? And with great forethought, we said, well, let's see what else is in the fridge. And it turned out we had some gorgeous heirloom variety carrot. So we sliced those up fairly thin. We chopped up some peppers because we really wanted a little bit of heat to get spread all throughout this mix. Same amount of salt for 5 pounds of vegetables. 10 minutes or an hour or however long after mixing all that salt with the cabbage, we're gonna pull it back out, set it down in front of us, and we're gonna just take a good look and we're gonna say, oh my goodness, it's covered in little droplets of water. That's exactly what we want. Give it another mix just to make sure it's all evenly distributed, and then start packing it into your vessels. 5 pounds of cabbage makes about 3/4 gallon of packed down kraut. We'll put the green kraut in 2 vessels, one a half-gallon mason jar and then the other a little quart mason jar. The super magical rainbow kraut will go into another container that fits just about 3 quarts. The perfect size for this batch. These are the vessels where it's going to sit somewhere in your house for about 2 weeks or so for the fermentation to happen. Now pack it into jars. Punch it if you got that kind of energy working through your system, and press it down and really just do your best to work that cabbage down into the bottom of your jar or your ceramic crock or your plastic food grade bucket or whatever other vessel you're using. Just make sure that it's as clean as possible and that it's something that's food safe and won't leak. Put a little bit in and punch and press, and then put a little bit more in and punch and press, and if you're using glass, then on the side, you'll be able to see all these little air bubbles, and we want to force those out. The more you press, and the more you press, and the more you press, the more water is going to be pushed out of the cabbage and is going to create the brine in which the cabbage sits. We're trying to create an environment that is perfect for all the little critters that are going to live inside this mix and turn it into sauerkraut. Now we need to put a fairly heavy weight on top of our vegetables to keep them under the surface of the water. That's important, because if they're exposed to air up at the top, that's when you're going to get some mold, and we don't like mold. If it does mold, it's okay. You can get rid of it, and everything below the surface is going to be fine. Find a plate or a piece of plastic or something, and in the case of mason jars, you can take a little half-pint mason jar, which I think is just adorable. Fill it with water, put a lid on, and then just carefully press that right down on your cabbage. If you don't have too many little chopped things to float up around the side of it, that's perfect. You can also use a food-grade plastic bag, and that works really well. Now, just in case the bag leaks, we want to fill it not with water, but with a 5% saltwater brine. That way, if it leaks, at least the cabbage is still sitting in salt water, and that's what we want. If you use a good heavy-duty like freezer bag, I'd recommend putting 2 of them together, one inside the other. If you're using those thin plastic bags that you go and get stuff from the bulk food bin at Whole Foods and things from, you probably want to put 3 or 4 more of those together because they break. Now I recommend taking those containers of kraut and putting them into another vessel with some sides just in case it leaks. Often as everything settles and your weight gets pressed down a little, the level of the liquid rises and it comes over the top and it makes a big mess, and since you put it somewhere to forget about for 2 weeks, you actually forget about it, and then you come back and find out that there's gross stuff all over the floor and you gotta clean it up. So put it in a vessel and then put it in your garage or your basement. Or if you don't have a nice cool room like that, then put it there or over there or somewhere. It'll be fine. Well done! And now we wait. Oh, 2 weeks have passed. Let's see how our sauerkraut looks. Pull out that kraut. Scrape away just a little from the top. Give it a good smell. It smells like sauerkraut. Put it in your mouth. Cautiously, perhaps, it tastes like sauerkraut. And then, dump a bunch in a bowl and eat it. Put it on a sandwich and put it in the fridge. Leave it there for, I don't know, a week, a month, months. Ideally, you want to eat it within a few weeks, a couple of months perhaps, because that's when the texture and the flavor is going to be the best. But in reality, I have forgotten about sauerkraut for a long time in the back of my fridge. And it's still delicious. That's it. That's sauerkraut on the Mason Jar Suite. Please leave comments below. Tell us what you think. Tell us how you make sauerkraut, and send us links to pictures of this sauerkraut if indeed you make this one. I would love to see that. And also hit the red subscribe button if you'd like to be notified when more of the Mason Jar Suite is released. Happy canning!